Hey, Erev Tov. Final shiur for the year. So it's it's interesting when I saw somewhere, I don't remember, it's one of the Hasidic rabbis, I think, who says it. The last when we daven Mincha, tomorrow night we'll come to Shul, we daven Mincha, Erev Rosh Hashanah. There's literally a few moments left of the year. It's about to be Rosh Hashanah, about to be the new year. We daven Shemona Esrei, we say, Barech Aleinu et Hashana Azot. Bless this year. What do you mean Tashana Azot this year? The year's finished. It's gone. There's a few seconds left. It's over. Obviously, we don't change Matbet Tfilah. We're going to start saying, well, we'll change the language if we daven Tzamach Tishkiya, if we daven earlier. That would be ridiculous. But we have you could say it's a technicality. Those are the words we say all year. Barech Aleinu Tashana Azot. So we say it's not so applicable now because the year's nearly finished. Or you could say, so one of the Admorim says, based on this, says, what do you see? What's the message? You see that one moment has the power to change the entire year. There's only a few moments left, but what we do in those moments, retroactively, that can change. That can be, the whole year can be defined by the way it ends. In Halakha, there's a concept, Rosh Hashanah and other places, talks about Yom Echad b'Shana, Chashuv Shana. That one day of a year can be an entire year. Talks over there about counting the years, Rosh Hashanah being the new year for kings. We count the reign of the kings starting from that date. But there's Nisan or Tishrei, Jewish kings, non-Jewish kings, etc. But it says if the king came on the last day, there was one day of the year before Rosh Hashanah. That he's now in the second year of his reign. One day has the power of an entire year. Also brought in Halakha, not just the Mekubalim. It's brought in the Mishnah Berurah. That this week, the final week of the year, has the ability to correct the entire year that came before it. Every day of the week, Sunday for the Sundays, Monday for the Mondays. Whatever that means. But it says that the last day of the year has the power to correct the entire year as well. Something to, I guess, think about as we go into the final day of the year, going to the final tefillot of the year, not just to throw away, but to think about it as we enter Shana Chadashah as well. So I wanted to share with you, we've been discussing the last couple of days, this dichotomy, this paradox of the different emotions of Rosh Hashanah. We mentioned this idea yesterday of Evrach Mimcha Elech, ran away from you towards. Yeah, mentioned it yesterday very, very briefly. I just want to read, the Brisker Rav says it. He says it in a very, very beautiful way. I want to read out from his language where he explains this concept. He says like this. He says, Mavuar kan, shayamim ha'elu hem yemei pachad mola. These are days of fear and dread. V'mola gadol ad kadei bricha. You're so scared you want to run away. Shemechmat godla mola tzarich livroch. Ve'en makom livrach ki im lemanos elav. Explained yesterday, you're going to run away from God, so to speak. You're not trying to run away. There's nowhere to run away. We run towards Him. Etc. So he says, the time when a person is in trouble, is facing distress, that is the place for bitachon. Bitachon means trust in Hashem, faith in Hashem. This Rav says something beautiful here. He says bitachon is not a person who says, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about. I'm, not going into war, going into whatever it is. There's nothing to be concerned. No reason for concern at all." That's not bitachon. That's a person who's just not connected to reality. But he says bitachon is like this. Only a person who realizes the dangers that he faces, that's where you have a place for bitachon. Because the person doesn't recognize that there's anything to be worried about, he therefore doesn't have any fear, that's not bitachon. He just doesn't realize what's going on. He just doesn't understand. But to the extent that a person understands there is what to be concerned about, but then they say, now I have bitachon, Hashem's going to help me through this. To that extent, that's where you can have that midah of bitachon. He says, that's exactly what the Rambam says. The fear is so great, you can't get away from it. Now that he understands, now that he's aware of the fear that there should be, now we can reach bitachon, real bitachon. That's running towards Hashem. באופן שנמצא, המנוס אליו שייך רק אחרי שהוא מרגיש שהוא צריך לברוח. First, you have to understand, you need to run away. First, you have to understand there's something to be concerned. Once you understand that, where are we running to? We have Hashem, we've got bitachon. Then you can be sameach. And he says that's exactly what we explained. We saw in the Torah. It talks about these days of, on the one hand, pachad. Once we recognize that, then we can recognize as well that there's a simcha, there's a bitachon, and Hashem will do that. Will do that next. That's where it is. That's where it's appropriate. So says the Brisker Rav. I heard about the Brisker Rav when he passed away. It was just before Yom Kippur, and apparently that year he was on Rosh Hashanah of that year. He was very anxious. He was very afraid. I don't know exactly, but they say Rav Shach went to speak to him. Shach brought in this, spoke to him about this Torah, this midrash we've been discussing for 2 days. That we have to be confident, we have to be sure, and this will be done. And the Brisker Rabbi answered back this exact point. He said, yes, first we have to recognize the Brisker. He said, first we have to recognize the danger and recognize that, and then we can. So that's the idea over there. Another idea I just wanted to share just before we get into Rosh Hashanah is relates to the tefillah of the day. And there's something surprising and something strange when we think about the tefillot of Rosh Hashanah. And we think about what are the things that are in the machzor, and what are the things that we daven for, and what are the things that we say. And it seems to be that Ha'ikar Chasem Menasech. I mean, if this is the day of judgment and everything is hanging in the balance and what's going to be in our lives, and we'd expect that we come along and we daven for our lives and we daven for our health, that we daven for all these things. And this year it's even less because the first day is Shabbat. So the practical differences when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat, so we don't have to keep shofar, and we don't have tashlich, and we don't have Avinu Malkeinu. One of the sections where we ask for our personal needs on Rosh Hashanah, one of very, very few sections. Say to me, well, we have in the Amidah, we have in the Shmoneh Esrei for the entire, not just Rosh Hashanah, the entire 10 days until Yom Kippur. We say Zochreinu L'Chaim, Kotvenu B'Sefer Sefer Chaim, Bracha V'Shalom, Parnasat Tova, etc. Those 4 editions that we have in the Amidah, where we do request for ourselves. The truth is, those are not essential editions. Those are later editions. And the proof of that is that because they are later editions, they are not ma'akev, meaning the person forgot to say them. The person forgot to say Zochreinu L'Chaim. The person forgot to say Kotvenu L'Chaim Tovim. You don't go back. You don't go back and repeat the Shmoneh Esrei. They're not essential elements of the tefillah, which raises the question: they're not essential elements. You don't go back for them. How are we allowed to add them, and how do we say them in the first place? It's also difficult because we add in the first 2 brachot and in the last 2 brachot of Shmoneh Esrei. These are not places where we add in personal requests. These are not places where we have bakashot. So one of the terutzim, based similar to what we said yesterday, that these are not for an individual level. These are on a national level for the klal, and therefore yes, that's one that's one answer which is given. But in any event, it just shows that we do have these elements where we ask for ourselves, where we mention, what's going to be the fate of our judgment. That is the exception to the rule. That is not the major theme of the tefillot of Rosh Hashanah, and it's almost don't mention ourselves at all. So the question is, if a person feels the need, wants to add in to the tefillot, wants to think about personal prayers, is that something that's appropriate? Is it something that's acceptable? Is that something that should be added in? So the Zohar is very, very, very strict against this. The Zohar says that people come along on Rosh Hashanah and they ask for Banei Chayei Mezon, they ask for their lives, ask for sustenance, etc. They're compared to dogs that are barking. That's not what the day is. That's not what the day is about. The day is about, you should be thinking about Hashem. You should be thinking about Malchut Hashem. You shouldn't be thinking about yourself. But there is, Rabbi Kenigsberg has an interesting piece on this, a brilliant analysis that he says the following. He says, based on the Tefillah of Chana, he says that when Chana, which we heard about a little bit on Sunday, we read the Tefillah of Chana is in the Haftarah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Chana is in the Mishkan and she is davening, and Eli Kohen sees her and he thinks that she's drunk. Right? We know the story.
Says the Lubavitcher Rebbe like this. He says it's not just that it's not that he thought that she was drunk. We find a number of times, number of places throughout Tanakh, throughout Chazal, throughout the idea of being drunk, being intoxicated, does not literally necessarily mean that idea, but sometimes the idea of being what we call hishtapchut hanefesh, maybe being drunk on prayer to an extent. He saw this person, and she was davening her heart out, but she was, to the extent it was beyond what was normal. She wasn't giving up. And what was she davening about? She's davening for herself. She's davening for her own personal needs. She's davening for her son. She's davening for children. She's thinking about. Nelia Cohen comes along, and he says, "You're here. You're in the Mishkan. This place. This is not the place. It's not the time to be thinking about yourself. This is the time to be thinking about him. And this is not an appropriate form of tefillah, the extent to which you're going and what you're." And Hannah answers back to Eli. She says, "No, I was pouring out my soul, not for my own sake. It's for him. It's for him. That's what I want. It's l'shem shamayim." And that's what is he accepted that answer. And he says it above Rebbe, that is what should be going through our minds, and that is the way that we can, again, resolve yet another contradiction when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is about Hamlachat HaMelech, about coronation of the king. So making Hashem king over all of creation. What most people forget is that making Hashem over all of creation means making Hashem king over us as well, over me. But part of that is, so what is my role in that? How am I going to bring about that Malchut of Hashem? So there are things we need. There are things that we need in order to play our part. A servant can only be a good, a servant who just, lies in bed and doesn't do anything is a lousy servant. But one who is able to get up and do the work and put in all the effort, and there's certain things he needs. He needs the tools, he needs the strength, he needs the ability to be able to do that. If we come on Rosh Hashanah and we say to Hashem, we want to serve you, we want to make your name great in the world, we want to make this your oneness and your kingship recognized. And I, as an individual, am able to do that with certain tools that you've given me. I need life, I need health, I need strength, I need all sorts of things. Why? In order to serve you, in order to create that. If we come along with that, so he says, then you're not asking for yourself, you're asking for him. You're asking in order to fulfill that to fulfill that purpose in the world. You have to fulfill it the best way that you can, and that is appropriate. If a person is doing it only for themselves, for selfish reasons, so that's what we're talking about. That is what Eli Cohen thought that Hannah was doing, and that is why he was so upset and so against it. But if we understand that there is a greater purpose, and we need this for that, we're able to elevate our own desires and our own thoughts and wishes for the sake, not for our own sake, but for the ultimate purpose of Rosh Hashanah. And that's what the tefillot are telling us and teaching us. So that is something appropriate, and that is something lofty that we can all aspire to. Bezrat Hashem, all the tefillot, yitkablu b'ratzon, shall be accepted. Tiva v'chatima tova. Shana tova to everyone.